Welcome to our Hispanic Heritage Month highlight panel. Hispanic Heritage Month takes place from September 15th through October 15th. And during this month-long celebration, history, culture, and achievements of all Hispanic and Latin communities are recognized. I'm so glad to be here today with this amazing group of Hispanic and Latinx movers and makers to discuss how their culture impacts how and why they make. The session features closed captioning as well as ASL interpretation, and thank you so much to our interpreters, Desiree and Gianna, for joining us today. I'm going to pass it over to Jes to talk a little bit more about the session.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited for everybody to be here. I do want to talk a little bit about the difference between Hispanic versus Latino. Today's conversation hopefully brings into view how we as makers see our place in the fiber community and the opportunities that are gained through these important conversations for others to learn about our rich cultures and heritages and how it impacts the world of making. For those who may not know the difference between the terms Hispanic and Latino, I want to briefly acknowledge why they are different and why this is important to me and to our community. The term Hispanic refers to people who speak Spanish or are descended from Spanish-speaking European countries. The term Latino refers to people who are descended from Latin American and Caribbean countries.
Thank you, Jes. And thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation today. If you have a question as the panel is taking place, please write them in the chat. You can put a capital Q at the beginning of your question, or you can save them for when we have a Q&A session near the end of the panel. I do want to introduce you all, of course, to our panel today. Before I do, my name is Stephanie. I'm the event coordinator at Floxsie and the moderator for today's session. And we're joined today with my colleague, Jes, Floxsie social media manager, as well as Marilisa Lugo, Yesenia Gutierrez, and Martín Valle. I'm going to also ask our panelists to briefly introduce themselves as well before I hand things over to Jes to lead our discussion today. So we'll start with Jes.
Hi, I'm Jes, Jes Velez. Like Stephanie said, I am the social media marketing person for Floxsie. My pronouns are she and her, and I prefer the term Latina.
Thank you, Jes. Marilisa.
Hi, my name is Marilisa Lugo, and I am the girl behind The Girl Meets Yarn on YouTube, and I'm a she, her, and I like to be called Boricua. Yeah.
Thank you. And Yesenia?
Hello, everyone. My name is Yesenia Gutierrez. My pronouns are her and she. I also identify as Boricua, and I am the creator and maker behind Senia Studios.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Martín.
Hi, everybody. My name is Martín Valle. I identify with Latino or Latinx. I use he, him, él pronouns. I'm a child of Salvadoran immigrants, born and raised in ancestral Chumash, Tongva, and Kish land, and now living in ancestral Nacotchtank land, also known as DC. I actually work as a coordinator and providing accommodation services for the local deaf community here, and spend most of my time knitting and also playing horror video games with my friends. So I'm really happy to be able to be here today.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's get into it. Martín, what are your influences in your life inspired you to be a maker?
Ooh, all right. Just I love making stuff. There's a phrase that I hear often, like busy hands or happy hands. That's definitely been like something in my life, just out of sometimes like anxiety or just I'm the only child, so I knew very well how to like take care of myself and keep myself busy. So I remember years ago there was a comic that I used to follow, and she would make little amigurumi crochet stuff. And so somebody once asked her, like, how do you do that? And she was like, well, I wasn't born doing this, right? Like I just had an interest one day and I did it and I was like, you know what, me too. And I went to Walmart and I got a crochet hook and some yarn and I got on YouTube, and then that's been it since, and like a friend encouraged me one day to learn knitting during the pandemic. And so that's where I've been. So I just love making it. I love having something at the end of the day that's like, I made this with my hands and I can share it with people. I've gifted many of them to my mom, and so it's just that kind of stuff inspires me, and just seeing people's creativity too. Sometimes sparking people's creativity also, like people see things that I make and they're like, where'd you get that? I'm like, I made it, and like, you can make it too. So just sharing that kind of energy.
Yesenia, how are your influences inspired you to be a maker?
So there's two particular people that influenced me in my creative journey. And it was my mother and my grandma. So actually they're the ones that passed down the art of crochet and knitting and mondillo, which is lace making. That's very popular in the island. So they were always teaching us how to do that, and sewing. Unfortunately, mondillo is not for me. I still have all the things to create with that. It's like lace making, but I stuck with crochet, and that's always been my number one love. And it's just awesome to know that my grandmother's taught my mother and she's taught me. So they're the two biggest influences that inspire me for my maker journey. Yeah.
Awesome. Marilisa?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm like Yesenia. It was passed down through both of my grandmothers, which they were both seamstress, and especially my grandmother in my father's side, she made everything. I don't have a thing that she didn't know how to make. I think it was just more kind of like cultural and socially as well, that everybody used to know everything so they can have cute things, right, to make them themselves. We didn't have like, Walmart or whatever to buy stuff. I learned as a kid to crochet, and I usually saw my mom and my grandmother making mundillo as well, which I know how to do. And again, it's like Yesenia, it's not my cup of tea. It's a lot. And I remember my kids touching my mom's little bobbins. And that was not okay. Because, if you twist one of those wrong, then it's something. But they were I think the strong women in my life were the ones who passed that down. And it was not I don't know, I was just not a kid to be watching too much TV, although we did watch a lot of TV, but we were always doing something, kind of keeping our hands busy, as Martin did as well. It's kind of true. It's just very soothing. So those were the ones that influenced me when I was a kid.
Nice. Since you have the spotlight on, what makes your Hispanic or Latin heritage important to you?
What make I think I'm from Puerto Rico, born and raised there. I moved to the States when I was 34, quite late, right? And I think I see my culture as a warm blanket that I always rely on. It was just nurturing and warm and loud and hands and everything. And I just saw it as, I was four, like a little kid with sand on my toes, the sun on my face, sweating, dancing, and being, just expressing myself in every way or form. It was just like, I see it as a warm blanket that I go back to. It's just like one of those days when, when you feel like a little down, you're like, oh, let me make some arroz con gandules, it's just to just remind me of home, right? Just so comforting. And in the same way, I just feel like, I was just like wrapped and forged, with all those elements: sand, sweat, heat, loud. Yeah.
Yesenia?
I think for me, definitely is just in general why it's important to me is because it's like who we are. It's a part of our roots, right? And kind of like what Marilisa said is like, you know, our culture was about more of a necessity and not really like pleasure. But now we're blessed with our today's culture where this is more of like something we do for enjoyment, but it always has that sense of like comfort and it's just familiarity. Like I remember doing it for a long time. I started crocheting when I was 10, 9 or 10, and I stopped in my 20s for some, you know, other interest. And it's just one day you just pick it up and it just comes all back to you naturally. Your hands just start doing the movement, and it's just that comfort of knowing that, oh, I can just pick this up whenever. It's almost like a second language to express yourself without even having to use words. So I definitely think it's important because it's like part of who we are. It's like my roots. So it's very important to me.
Martín, do you have anything to add?
You know, just maybe just in agreement, you know, with everything that I love that expression. It's a warm blanket because it definitely is, you know, just as my own personal experience. I grew up in LA and I moved to DC, and it's been a very different experience being here. And so just yeah, and I mean, for me, the fact I like emphasizing that I come from immigrants because that is a foundational part of like who I am, and just who I am today as an adult would not be the same without my parents' struggle and just that experience. So it's a really important part of me. It's been interesting to be here too, because just being exposed to so many different cultures and everything growing up. So just to add in agreement with everything that was said, yeah.
Yesenia, how does your culture influence your craft?
Oh, I feel like it impacts it greatly for me. So being born on the island of Puerto Rico, like we're all about music, we're all about like colors and simplicity. And it's interesting to say these two things on the same sentence, that less is more, because if you've been to the Caribbeans, we're all about color and expressing ourselves, but a lot of it's so simple, and it's just the simple architecture and garments and stuff that we wear on a daily basis because being on warmer climates. And so for me, that really inspires my work today, even though I'm not living there currently. I find myself gravitating towards bold colors and movement and things that have simpler lines. And it just seems very like familiar to me. And I've just drawn so much to that. And it just brings me a sense of joy. And I try to express that a lot in my social media presence as well. It's really hard when you see other platforms with like, not that I don't like neutral tones, but sometimes you feel like if I put that pop of red, is it too much? And when I became,
No, it's not.
I say into my 30s, it's true what they say, you kind of just don't really care what other people say. And I feel like I've stepped into that culture of what is familiar for me and what I grew up with. And now I just wear colors unapologetically, either on my clothing or on my face, or, you know, with makeup. So I try to put that a lot on my social media as much as I can. I do go through spurts where you're gonna like pull up Yesenia's feed. You're like, Yesenia, I see neutrals. But if you scroll down, you'll definitely see color throughout there as well. So I try to express that on my social media as much as I can.
Awesome. Marilisa, do you have anything to add?
Yes. When I read this question, I was like, well, I am the worst Latina in this entire world because I am not into too much color, although I am. And I had to do a little bit of research. I'm like, why do I like neutral and light in, you know, like linen and cotton and stuff like that? Why, you know? At the same time, my mom is so loud that I think I was just like, okay, I just need to kind of like tame it down a little bit, like, you know, cut that. Anyway, but I did a little bit of research, and I was kind of like being hard to myself, like, well, you know, you have to be like, you're not being Latina enough. And we usually think about, you know, and, you know, Latinas and Boricuas to be very loud. But the reality is that if we go back in history, it was not the case, right? Like we had a piece of cloth that it was white because that was what people could afford, and they put a little bit of ribbon in here and there, and they had this kind of like, you know, just a little drawstring here, and they were like, you know, shoulders out, so, you know, just for your little sass. But at the same time, it was more of, you know, everybody can wear this shirt. It was just like a nice gown for everybody. And cotton and linen always come back a lot on, you know, through the history, because of the heat is so much and the humidity is so grand, and it's insane that even though, if I wrap that around, I was, you know, kind of like being hard on myself that I was not too colorful, but I bring my heritage in the fiber that I use, you know, with, you know, dabbing a little bit with the cotton and the linens and a little bit more airy. And then also I have discovered lace, and I am very into lace these days. And if we wrap around to mundillo and lace making and open work, we do a lot of open work. It was very traditional to have like linen, and then you make it really pretty just with the open work and just kind of like lace work in there. So in a way, I was being really hard, you know, like, you're not Latino enough, but I truly am in a different way, even though I'm not that colorful, though, you know, I'm a lot of color. Sometimes I'm very colorful. Does that make sense? I hope
Yes, it does. Martin, do you have anything to add?
So I think I love it. Like, I love the color discussion, because that's definitely like me and my friends. And a lot of us have the discussion of, you know, or there's a famous designer, Stephen West, that does knit stuff. And there was a whole thing about like, neon is a neutral. Like, yeah, of course, like a neon color can be, you know, neutral too. But it's funny because I think growing up on the West Coast too, like California, just I feel like this need to represent it sometimes when I'm here in DC, because it's pretty business centered, and so it tends to be very kind of similar, and there's not always like a lot of creativity that you see in other parts of the country. And so that motivates you more to, you know, if I'm gonna get a puffy jacket for the winter, it's gonna be lime green. Like, it's not gonna be just like any other color, you know. And if I'm gonna make this shawl is a little bit toned down, but if, you know, if I'm gonna make a shawl, I'm gonna have like a nice little pop of color in it. So just that kind of stuff. And I think just more than anything too, I think the people, you know, it's who I've been able to meet in the community. I've been really lucky to meet also like a lot of Spanish speaking makers from other parts of the world. And I don't know if I would have necessarily met them without having something like this to share with them. So it's been cool. And then just, right, you know, I came to this through my own interests and through the internet, right? But hearing all these stories of people having these amazing skills passed down through generations, like, that's pretty awesome. So just being able to know that that exists also, it's not part of my story, but it is a story that is in the community like that. I feel you cannot divorce those two things, right? Like who you are and your culture and that stuff. So yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to circle back to something that Marilisa said. Why do we feel like we're not Latina enough or Hispanic enough? Can you guys talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's, you know what, I could relate 100% with Marilisa when she said that. I think it's just because of society. You know, society tells you you have to fit in this box. And the thing about Hispanic and Latins is that, you know, we are told growing up for a very young age that we have to fit into this box, this norm. But the beautiful thing about Hispanic and Latins is that there's a lot of diversity in the culture, different types of Spanish, different type of languages and, you know, traditions. And a lot of people think, you know, they put everybody in one box, that all their art, their music, their, you know, their food are all the same, but they're not. You know, it's even the same in the Caribbeans, like different parts of the Caribbean have different types of food, and the same in Mexico, right? So my husband's Mexican, and, you know, naive was thinking all Mexican food was the same, and it's not the case. You know, there's so much richness, so much difference. And I think that our culture, or like, you know, the community says that we have, as Latina, we have to fit this, like, you know, look of bold and loud. And being a young age, you know, people always told you it's a negative to be bold or loud or being out there, they always are like, you're too much, is what they would say, right? So I agree with Marilisa. I was like, when I used to be into makeup, I was like, love my red lipstick, like what you're wearing, Jess. And I was like, I would love it. And I remember people were like, wow, that's bold. Where are you going? Girl, I was just buying a gallon of milk. I wasn't going anywhere special. But society tells you that you're being too much or too loud. And you just kind of dim your light as a, Hispanic or Latin, that, you're too much. And I think now people are realizing that we're breaking in that box and we don't have to fit in this, and we can express ourselves regardless if it's through simplicity or color or fabric or lack of color. Like I always think that too. I'm like, am I not Latina enough? Am I not Puerto Rican enough because somebody tells me I don't look Puerto Rican? Am I a fraud? And so I think you always, growing up, we're constantly questioning who we are, and either is it a person or in our craft. But I can go on. Let me shut up and I'll let somebody else speak. But that's what I think. We're so worried about it.
Yeah. Martín, do you want to give a male perspective to this?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Actually, in that sense, I mean, speaking of color, I love that I've been able to be more comfortable with it. I think that oftentimes, and maybe not often, but you do see that kind of perspective sometimes. Like I want to respect and treasure people's, right? Like if you like more earth tones, great. Like, that's absolutely, use whatever you feel is good for you. I think sometimes, some guys will get into of like, I want to only use neutral colors. All right, cool, like great, but that's not going to be my jam, but definitely it could be yours. I often think about just having experiences of otherness and growing up with those. And so just realizing as I get older too, like, I don't want to continue perpetuating that to myself. So because I did carry very rigid opinions, very strict opinions about like people that didn't speak Spanish or, blah, blah, XYZ. And just realizing that I had a very special circumstance. My parents had no choice. Like they could only speak Spanish. So that's what I got at home. And I grew up bilingual. And so I had a great opportunity that other people didn't sometimes, for wanting to assimilate better or for not wanting to be discriminated, all those things, which are very complicated experiences that many of us face. And again, right, just because that was my experience doesn't mean that it's someone else's, and it doesn't make them any less Latinx or Hispanic than me. So I don't want to continue perpetuating that too. And just, that's all that I wanted to add.
Okay. Marilisa, do you have any thoughts?
We can go here for years. But I recently moved to Texas, and I have a friend from Puerto Rico, right? And we went out with her mom yesterday, and I'm a storyteller, and the mom was like, "Oh my God, you're so loud," and she's like, "I don't care," she was like, and in a moment I was like, okay, and I was just like, good for her. She is not settling for anything less than, and we are loud and we are passionate and we are whatever, we it's just a little bit, it has to be a little bit about being comfortable, with it. And the reality is that I learned, I think really young, that it doesn't matter what you do. People are going to have an opinion. It doesn't have to do anything with you. So be you. And yeah, I can go on and on. My kids sometimes make fun of my English, and I'm like, like, whatever. I did something good because you're correcting me, but I don't want to change. And this also, all the talking with the hands. Also, my son is like, oh my God, did you always have to do this? And I'm like, yes. And it's so funny. And I don't know if any of you have this experience, but I had a friend, which is from the States, and she came to my house and we start talking, and it was so loud and she was so petrified that we were fighting. We're not. We're just like having, we're just like having a conversation, and it's actually funny. So, it's, I don't know. I had a hard time sometimes muting myself. I think just feels like acceptance is something that it's it has to come from within, right? It just has to be you accept yourself, and then the rest will, I think. But anyway, besides that, Just be you. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And at the same time with my kids, they are from Puerto Rico as well. They were, were brought here little, and they had to, kind of blend in just to not be discriminated, and that's so hard to see, right? And now they're loving being Puerto Rican. They're like in Puerto Rico for 3 months already. I'm like, you have to come back, okay? Not to move down there, but yeah, it's a unique journey that you have to go through. And yeah, I don't know if I added something, but
you did.
I added a story.
Everything adds to this conversation, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's funny to hear about like so my family is also very loud, and I am not as much. I mean, so Jes and I have met in person, and I think I just, like as much as I can, I'm like, let me just blend into the background. But I realized that it's also like, oh wow, I have like a lot of like flexibility, because then when I go back home, I'm like, oh, if I don't get loud, then I'm never gonna get a word in. So then I just amp it up when I'm with them. So it's like, okay, when I leave my family, it's like, I'm cool. But then when I go back, I'm like, no, I need to get in there, because otherwise I'm never going to have an opinion. So, but I love it, and yeah.
When we met,
I love it.
you and I, we were screaming at the top of our lungs in the yarn shop. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay, so JK, just maybe sometimes I feel comfortable with you. So that's what it was.
Yeah. I'm like,
and I was
honestly, I feel like sometimes when you meet someone of your same culture, something happens that like your walls come down, because you're like, oh, I get you. You get me. You know what I mean? And I think that's what happened. And that's why like we were comfortable within moments of meeting each other. Same thing with Yesenia and Marilisa, and I think. If
I can add to that too, like,
absolutely.
I'm really fortunate that I have, people like you in my life. And I say that because, like I have another friend, a really good friend, Jimmy. So he's like my really good knitting friend. And we went to Rhinebeck together last year for the first time. And I won't be there this year because I made a scheduling mistake. But anyway, so, but I was a little bit apprehensive, to be honest, because I was like, I don't know, I'm going to the space and I don't really know what it's going to be like. I've been to comic book conventions and all that kind of stuff. But just being there and running into you and your sister and running into other people and other Latinx Hispanic makers also there, I felt really comfortable. And, we had this like little group of just, Jimmy is Mexican. We had another friend who's Puerto Rican too. So it was just nice to be kind of in that space and see other people who look like me. And that was nice, because I was a little bit like scared of, not scared, but I was just nervous. I'm like, I don't know what this experience is going to be like. And that made it so much better. So even just that someone else's presence even makes a big difference too.
Yeah. Awesome. In your opinion, what opportunities are there in the Latinx Hispanic maker community, fiber community? Have you identified any gaps that need to be filled by the makers of our background? Not everybody all at once.
So okay. This might be like a very, oh, sorry, please, Marisa.
No, go ahead.
I think this might be a very like niche kind of thing, but so talking to other makers from other countries that speak Spanish mainly, so realizing like, oh, sometimes, accessibility to content, because patterns are usually in English, right? Or sometimes even because we have such an amazing variation in Spanish, terms are not always the same. Like, what do you call the garter stitch? What do you call a pearl stitch? Or so all those kind of things. And I think there are opportunities. Like maybe if we had more translation of material, people would have more access to it. A lot of them, thankfully, know English, so then they have access to the material. But it's like, what if we had more access to that kind of stuff too?
Marilisa, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yes, I think to add to what Martin said, yes, there's a lot of terminology that varies, by country, and we all speak some kind of Spanish. I used to teach yoga, and I used to say a word that everybody was like, okay, you're not supposed to say that, and I'm like, what do you mean I should not say that? I tried, but I couldn't change it. So I used to teach yoga in English and Spanish, and I had to just move to English because it was more universal, and the terms were more clear. I think the opportunities are there. You have to, you have to sometimes break the walls and just do it, and the right people is going to follow you. I think there's a little bit of lack of support sometimes, and that in my own experience, I'm not talking for anybody else's experience, for many reasons, and yeah, it's one of those. And if it's not there, like I was talking to you the other day, I didn't see anybody in YouTube that looked like me and talked like me and whatever. So I was just like, oh, I'm really out there. And I was very conscious about, people not liking me, and probably it's my accent, blah, 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 or I am not, I don't speak perfect English, and quite honestly, I think people understand me. I'm not putting too much effort either to it. So I had to pass that phase of trying to just be like $100 bill, right? Like everybody has to like me. The right people will follow you and like you regardless. So let's make the way and just keep on going, whatever. Yeah. So I think there's a lot that I wish I could see, or I wish I could see more designers that will design that are from other countries. I do follow some that they write their patterns in Spanish, and I wish they were in English and they were more more known, and some people will pick them up because they're amazing. I wish there were more Latin, like Puerto Ricans, because we're like knitting. What? Well, no.
Well, in this panel, there's 3 of us.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Anyway, that's it.
Any thoughts, Yesenia?
Oh, I was just enjoying listening.
Yeah, no worries.
I agree with both Martín and Marilisa. Like, I think the content is out there. I think it's just because probably the expand of your feed is not reaching those areas. Because I at first was the same way. I'm like, I don't see any, Hispanic or Latinx creators. And then I started searching the hashtags in Spanish, and then they all showed up. And I'm trying to be better at surrounding myself with different hashtags and feeds and makers and creators. But it's so fascinating because like I think about it, and my grandmother, like a lot of the things that she did was out of memory. She would look at something and just create it like out of sewing, or she created crochet because crochet has that uniqueness of free form. And so I was like, no wonder why when I was growing up, I didn't have any patterns. Like it took me, I could read graphs, like diagrams and graphs prior to reading a pattern because she just knew everything out of her head. And so I think for me, I learned that first. And being a maker and also a designer, I'm learning that I need to also step in and fill in those gaps as well. I have to remember when I started, I only could read graphs or freeform things. So what is it that's accessible for other people? And if it's having your pattern in multiple languages, if possible, if the resources are there, or using those extra tools like diagrams and things like that, I think would be really helpful. I could only think of like a handful of designers that have their patterns in multiple languages. But I just like inclusivity with sizing. I think the same, like what Martín says, is just that language, finding those patterns that also have the multiple languages that you can utilize. I definitely think it's a gap that could definitely be filled. The nice thing is that we're in an age where technology and social media is our best tool of reaching out and connecting with others that might be able to assist us with that and finding that. And that's for me as a maker and creator, that's what I want to be better at doing, is just making sure I'm exercising all those tools I have in my hands so I can make my patterns accessible to others that probably could not make it otherwise.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Can you share a nugget of advice for others who aspire to be part of the fiber community?
Can
I
you
think
repeat
just-
that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Can you share a nugget of advice for others who aspire to be part of the fiber community?
Oh, go ahead, Martín. I just wanted to hear the question.
No, sure. I want to piggyback on, or just continue on something that Marilisa said recently, that, you know, I think just be yourself. You know, I know that it may sound a bit cliche, but she was absolutely right. I think that you just go out and do it, and you will find your group of people. Like Yesenia mentioned, like we have the amazing resource of technology, right? So I think, right, it might take a little bit of looking, but you will find people that like something that you like. You know, in knitting, like I prefer shawls. Some people really love socks, you know, and so you will find that other person that just really loves to make socks or sweaters, which are really hard for me. So I haven't made one yet, but one day. But, you know, so it's there is just so much out there. And so I think just, you know, take a bit of time to look, and also take time to enjoy, like enjoy it yourself, you know, see what is something that you really enjoy. If you really love those neutral colors, just rock those neutral colors and just really get into them and find patterns. There's a lot of things like stuff on even Ravelry or people that Pinterest and stuff. You can find so many different combinations of neutrals and what colors go with them, or people who teach us something about color theory, you know. So there's just always so many things. I think the community itself is so diverse also, and there's so many diverse interests. So you will definitely find something that you fit into, and you will find your people.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm always saying here. I'm old, okay? I am old. I'm 46. I don't know about these hashtags. The other day you asked me about the vibe, and I'm like, what's that vibe? You know, and there's a lot of us that don't follow a hashtag or don't know a little bit of the lingo. And in reality, I started to knit and sew because it was fun. But now I am making it, or, you know, I'm doing this, or, you know, crafting, because I want to take away from the fast, you know, fashion kind of thing, of that also very, you know, can be a little bit like whatever. But I have seen a lot of kind of, you know, we want to knit that thing that is out there instead of doing our research and look into, you know, other makers. I do that on sewing, right? I look at a pattern and I look at the hashtag, and I want to get all this information, and sometimes there's a lack of, because we want to, you know, make everybody happy, and we don't want to say that you probably should graph that better, which I know I am a little bit of rough on the edges sometimes, but you know, just doing the research is very important, and you put yourself out there. I want to see more, I don't know, more color and embroidery on, you know, knits and stuff like that, that will bring something to life even more. And I stopped knitting color work because I was not using it. But one time I finished this sweater, I was like, well, that's my number 7 blush pink sweater. Do I need another one? No. Well, I spent, I don't know, like 100 hours doing it. So let me embroider some flowers on it. And it looks, you know, kind of, I don't know, just mirrors my personality a bit, because, you know, I know I say I love neutrals, but I love hot pink as well, and black. So hot pink is the new black. I'm gonna get that here.
Yes. Fuchsia is a neutral.
Yes. So be yourself, be out there, you know, let's connect to each other. I am, you know, like I said, a little bit old, and probably some of here will be the same way. They're just like, let's start, you know, do a little bit of more research on those hashtags, which I find them so much work. But at the same time, you guys are, like Martin and Yesenia, they're like so important to find some other people that are just, you know, they're making great stuff, not just us, but everybody around the world. Just connect more. Yeah, that's it.
Yesenia, do you have any advice?
Just a little bit. And it's just I agree with both of them. It's just be yourself, be unapologetic. You know, you don't know the next person from the next person, and there's always room on the table. And I was always taught, even if there's no room, make your own table and enjoy it, right? And people will come to you, people will be gravitated towards what you have to offer, even if it's your neutral blush pink sweaters with beautiful floral embroidery or your neon scarves. Like, the audience will come to you, you know, and it's a lot easier just to live your life and being yourself and just creating what you love, because that's what we all do when we make and we create, is we're making things that bring us joy in the end of the day. You don't want to sit there making a colorwork sweater because everybody in your knitting group is making it either. If you want to do another blush sweater, do it. If you want to make a neon shawl, do it. Because in the end of the day, there might be somebody in that circle as well that you don't realize that are looking up to you to be inspired, you know. It's just a beautiful community, and, you know, just make what you love in the end of the day. And the great thing is, like, Martín has met you, Jes. It's just, you make those connections with people, and you realize that even that common thread, no pun intended, the common thread is that you both have something that you enjoy doing. Your feed and the things you make might not be the same, but it's just like enjoying that same community, and knowing that you found your people and enjoy what you're doing. And, you know, that's my goal for myself as well, is just, you know, even if I don't see the stuff that I want, I could just make it. I could just create it myself. And that's kind of how I do with my jewelry. You know, I used to just make simple things. I'm like, that's what everybody wears. Nobody wears the big, you know, pieces of jewelry. Nobody's going to buy that. And I remember listening to another fellow friend of mine who's also an artist, and she's like, you make your art for yourself. The people will come and enjoy it, and if they like it, they'll embrace it. If not, they'll move on, right? And that's the great thing about, like, your work. You know, some people might embrace it and some might not, but as long as you're creating for yourself and it brings you joy, that's all that matters.
What are common misconceptions people have? How can we combat these misconceptions and communicate more effectively?
Just like what Marilisa said, like, their misconception that you're not Latina enough, you're not Puerto Rican enough, you're not anything enough. But the thing is, you are enough. And if we keep on trying to fit in the things that society is telling us that we have to, we're never going to feel like we're who we are, right? And then we're going to be old, sitting down and being like, I've been living my life for, you know, what the heck? And when I get dressed every day, I'll wear something, and then I'm like, I don't know anybody at the store, so I'm going because that's what I'm going to wear. And, you know, when I go home, like, I'm not going to meet anybody that I ran into. Well, unless you run into coworkers, but that you're going to see in a daily life again, right? So it just, like, what I loved what Marilisa said and what you said is, like, you're enough. It's society has in us that we're never enough, or if you don't fit into this box, then you're not anything enough. And like Martín said earlier about being, like, in a Hispanic family, but being loud. Well, you must not be Hispanic. You're not loud enough. But, like, you know, is it though? Like, I don't know. I feel like Martín is a really good listener. So there's always, look at me talking my hands.
I know, but, I'm like this.
This is me down here the whole time. But yeah, I think that that's what I want to say. I don't even remember what I was saying. I'm just talking too much. I'll let somebody else speak.
No, you're fine.
So, can you hear me? You see, I'm old. You know, coming back to, I think it was question 2 or 3, and my little kind of like, oh, like, you're not Latino enough. Like, I'm not knitting with too much color. Yeah, just why box yourself to anything? And for me personally, I was like, no, you're really Latina. Like, you don't need any more color in your life. Like, you know, there's a lot of misconception. I think it comes from, you know, in my part in that moment that I looked at that question, which is like not too much information. So I just had to do, you know, the work and just look for the information, and just, you know, I learned quite a lot actually. And, you know, if there's a lot of misconception, and everything comes from, you know, not doing our research and educating ourselves enough with other people's cultures. And not to be a little harsh, but I had, for instance, a lot of people that ask me how I made my tortillas, and I'm like, we do tortillas, okay? Like we do rice. I mean, you want to make how to make sofrito? I know, but you know, and it comes from a lot of, you know, that lack of understanding that even though America is a continent, not as a place, you know, you said the United States, but there's a lot of diversity there, and we can only do our part. So I do my part, and I bring it down to my kids, and I wish everybody does the same thing, and just, you know, just do research. Google is so important, so nice. Why we were back in the day. Hold on.
I think maybe she got a call or something.
Yeah, I think so. Do you want to add anything, Martín, while we're still here?
Sure. I was gonna say, I think, you know, I am not one of those people, but I think that there's a lot of people nowadays that have really amazing like production skills, and you see like these like super amazing reels and like posts, and you know, I don't have that kind of skill. And you know, if I had the time, I can sit here and show you how many stitches I messed up, and it doesn't look that way, but like just keep that in mind. You know, like we make mistakes. I probably started this twice, and then you know, realized that I was doing the wrong thing. I had to change needle. All those things are part of the process, and I think that we don't talk about it enough. You know, you see at the end this beautiful project, but like, what did it take to get there? Or you know, how many heart attacks did I have because I dropped a stitch and then I couldn't fix the project, and then I had to start all over again. It just takes time, and you know, and it's part of the journey, and you learn so much. I think that I don't know if this is a misconception, but I think I just have it connected to what we were talking about before. Also, just like you can't, I can't speak enough to the value of having a community, because you know, I am eternally grateful for being in spaces. Welcome back, Marilisa. Being in spaces where you know, I'll be doing something and I'm knitting with people and like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Oh, let me show you how to do that, you know, and just being able to exchange that kind of skills and information, and having that kind of like just bond with other people that do the same thing that you do. So yeah, maybe, you know, we see a lot of people who obviously work on their personal brand, right? So you see that person just as a maker, but they're not an island, right? They're not by themselves. Like, there's a community that they're hopefully part of, that they're exchanging ideas with all the time too. So yeah, community is just, yeah, that's important too.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to open it up for questions from our audience. If you want to, Steph, is it okay if they unmute to ask questions, or just drop them in the chat?
Yes, they can unmute.
Okay.
You can also put your questions in the chat if you have.
I see my friend Steph in the chat, so thank you, Steph.
All right. So far, no questions. All right. I'm going to continue asking mine.
I think part of what you're saying applies to just any culture, that about finding a group that you can meld with and that sort of thing. I don't think it's exclusively having a particular culture that you're dealing with. I think it applies to anybody that is a maker, that you have to find a community. It may be more difficult in your particular culture, but I think as individual makers or individual, in my case, and well, I guess I do a number of things making, but for me, I'm a shut-in. So finding groups to work with is difficult because I can't go to the community and say, hey, how do you do this? Because I can't go sit with people. So I think part of what you're saying in the grouping of your community as a Latinx or whatever group just kind of applies to all of us that sit in, you know, kind of isolated communities. So I think what you've been talking about is very applicable to a lot of us in some kind of isolated community or different community. And I very much appreciated what you've had to say. So thank you very much for addressing a difficult issue.
Thank you, Beth. We appreciate your words.
I love that because I think it goes off of what Marilisa said about when she was looking for her community, her table to sit at. She was like, I didn't see anybody on social media that looked like me on YouTube.
Mhm.
And I love that she made a table and was welcoming other people to sit with her and be like, hey, I couldn't find what I was looking for, but maybe you'd love what I have to offer. Come sit with me. And I love that. And I love that Beth mentioned that, like, even though she listening to all of us speak, she could relate this to herself and how she's looking for that community as well. And it just shows, like what Martín says, like there's always somebody out there. And I agree, sometimes it's difficult to find somebody in person who can help you pick up a stitch or do this, but that's the wonderful thing too I love about this community is that just messaging somebody and just being like, hey, what do you think about this, you know, and just reaching out. And I think for us just to show availability, even if it's your face on your stories or on your grid, and you probably don't have to do somersaults and do those reels that, you know, Instagram or social media wants you to do, but even putting your face or small video and talking about your day lets other people relate to you and see that, hey, I'm here and you could talk to me. And I love that. So I just want to piggyback off of what Beth said. So
I just want to read what Jesse put in the chat. I just want to thank this panel for taking the time to 1, share about your experiences within this community, 2, giving us insight into your crafting world as a Latino, and 3, just being you. And Marilisa, thank you for your amazing podcast. I laugh, I get inspired, and I think you're just the coolest.
Thank you, Jes. I love you. Sorry, my husband was calling and I was like, stop! Anyway, thank you, Jes. You know, I had a lot of feedback when I started my YouTube channel because I was using foul language and I was, you know, kind of not the usual, let's talk about my tea now, you know, kind of thing, not saying that it's bad, but that was not the norm. It was not the same kind of format and I wanted to break that out. And I got a lot of pushback about it, and which is like a little, you know, kind of like, oh my gosh, I should just like follow this cookie cutter, you know, format that I don't know who invented it. Nobody did. Just like, you know, it was expected, and you know, breaking the mold was hard, but at the same time liberating. You know, let's just you know, live with your truth self. It takes a lot of courage sometimes. So anyway. So yeah, I am a Latina, and who doesn't like it? I'm sorry, I just cannot rub that out of my body. I just, like I said, I was like, I was forged that way. So just now, just like kind of change. Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely, thank you for coming. Does anybody have any closing remarks as we come to a close?
I just want to take a moment also, like this is maybe a little bit off topic, but just thank you, Jes and Stephanie, and just everybody at Floxsie for being really supportive, for wanting to make this an inclusive event, for having the interpreters here today. And if anything, you know, I know that sometimes it's stuff that's like really new to us. It is a community that I work with, so it is something that is important for me. But like, you know, anytime that you are making for anybody, whoever wants to make any events, like accessibility is really important. There's a lot of resources out there and people that can help you make it happen. So thank you so much. And I just really appreciate your willingness to do it. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Martín, for opening this avenue, this possibility for us to bring accessibility to the deaf community. It's great. And hopefully we'll do more of it in the future.
Yes, thank you, the Floxsie team and everyone who joined today. This was such a nice experience, a great group of people. And I agree with Martín, just like letting us sit here at this table and having these discussions and just speaking about our culture and just where we're from and a little bit about us, and letting other people who are on this live just to kind of relate to it. And I just want to let everybody know that my feed is open and welcome for everyone. So if you ever want to message me, my DMs are open. Just be warned, I love to talk. So, but thank you, Floxsie team, for having us.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you, Yesenia, Martín, Marilisa, to Gianna and Desiree for interpreting for us. This was a really amazing discussion, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. And I hope you guys are enjoying the event overall. We would love to continue this conversation. If you have any questions or comments, we're going to leave the Zoom session open until 4. But you can also get in contact with any of our panelists through Instagram, and you can also contact Floxsie through Instagram, and we have our email and contact form on our website. And we hope that you will join us for our next few sessions. It's our last day for the Pop Art Glam event. Our next demo is with Corey Eichelberger, and she's doing how to use Ravelry like a pro. And on our vendor channel, we have Sister Anansa Yarns. That's Naima Bond. She's a new vendor this time around. So we hope that you will check her out. And if you are not signed up for the event yet, you can still register on the event website and get access to all the recordings for the past sessions as well. So again, I want to thank you all for joining us, and to Jes for bringing this together, to our panelists and to our interpreters today. So thank you all so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.